Welcome back to another episode of the Corporate Pilot Dad podcast. Today we have a very special guest. We have Sean from the Working Title Group. Sean, welcome.
Hello, thanks.
And we also have our co-host Ian.
Hello, everybody.
And to get started, Sean, a lot of people know about the Working Title Group and the projects you guys have done and how you've made Flight Simulator better. But I want to back up just a little bit, and I would like for you to tell everybody about your aviation background.
Right, so it pretty much all started. I've always wanted to fly. In fact, I would say my love for aviation probably started when I was younger. My dad would take me behind Philadelphia Airport and watch the jets come in, right at minimums, 200 feet. Not much cooler than that when you're a kid. So flying was always like a dream of mine. I went into the or after high school, went into college as a mechanical engineer, but I left because did not like it at all, and I wound up going to the military, to the Marine Corps. And then I was going to re-enlist, but I looked at I kind of had the thought like, oh wait, I could be a pilot again. I'd like to do that. So I looked it up, and then I didn't realize that you could go back to college and fly and use the GI Bill. So once I figured that out, I was sold. I left the military and went back to college in 2012. Went to Southern Illinois, is where I started my flight training from 0 hours. Worked my way up to commercial certificate and multi and everything, and then I joined the flight team, which is the National Intercollegiate Flying Association, where you compete, in ground events and flight events with other colleges on the regional and national level. So that was I really enjoyed that. I like being competitive. It was a lot of work, like almost a full-time job on top of college and all that. But I got a lot of experience there. I got a lot of flight time. I used the Cessna 152 for competition landings. I think I have like 1,600 landings in that airplane, like 200 some hours. So
A lot.
a lot of
that time
practice
frame.
at that thing. Yeah, exactly. And then once a little bit further along in college, I started doing contract work for a corporate company, which they were flying the King Air 350 and the Citation CJ4. So during college, I was just doing some trips here and there for about, I think I did it for about a year. And then once I finished college, it was just an easy step right into that company because I was pretty much already working for them just as a contractor. So I worked for them for about 2 years. It's a lot of fun. I love the airplanes. Amazing airplane. And CJ4 is my favorite airplane by far. It's just like flying a Corvette. Really not much like it. And then I saw that the airlines were, the best hiring in forever, things like that. And I talked with one of the captains at our company. He was an older guy, and he basically said, you should join the airlines while the door is open. So that's what I did. I left and joined the regional airlines, which is where I fly now. And it's definitely a different type of flying, but I do enjoy it. It's a great job. And let's see, it's pretty much most of my background in flying. Oh, I had my tail wheel as well. That was a lot of fun. I wish I could do some more of that because it's definitely difficult. And even though I had my tail wheel, I wouldn't say I was good at it, good enough to say I could like solo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I also got my seaplane rating. That was the most fun I've had flying, hands down. Great
I've heard
training.
that from people.
Oh yeah, Jack Brown Seaplane Base in Florida. Awesome. I would love to go back and do it again. I was actually going to get my multi-engine training, but the airplane they had down there with the right next door to the airport sadly crashed. And I also got my A&P as well. I did that in college. I didn't do the CFI route. Just kind of wasn't my thing. I guess I got enough flight time elsewhere. But I like working on things like that and really enjoyed the A&P side as well. And I did some A&P work on the side. I worked at the school as an A&P, and then in the corporate job, I would do limited maintenance on the jet. And also there was an FBO there that I worked to do some annuals and stuff, and just limited GA maintenance. So that's pretty much the scope of my aviation background.
So it sounds like quite a bit. I mean, having the A&P, that's something that I wish I had done looking back on it. I think that's something that's super helpful as far as just from the pilot side of things of understanding the airplane and what's going on is having an A&P is super helpful. So that's great that you have that. I mean, that's something that's going to pay off for years to come.
Yeah, and I'd love to own my own airplane, but they're very expensive, and the A&P will certainly help out with that.
Yes, it will. Yeah. So you said you flew the King Air 350. Obviously,
Yep.
in Flight Sim 2020, there's a King Air 350. What's your opinion of the King Air 350 in Flight Sim based on your real world experience?
I flew it for about 10 minutes, and it definitely needs a lot of work. The avionics aren't correct as well. It's, I think, the G3X. The Yeah, I think that's what's in the sim.
I believe
Um,
so too.
yeah, I mean, it needs a lot of work. It looks great, of course.
Yeah, it looks
But
great, sounds good. And that's kind of the same
yeah,
take I have on it. I got it loaded up one time, and it was the same thing, like 15, 20 minutes, and a lot of stuff didn't work. You hover over a button, it said in-op. I'm like, well,
yeah,
I'm done with this. So I was kind of the same way. And then like flying the CJ4, obviously you've done that, and we know what great things the working title group has done for the CJ4. What was your impression of that airplane when you first tried it out in Flight Simulator?
So I was excited when it first came out. I was kind of blown away that Microsoft Flight Simulator was even coming back, and then that when I saw the CJ4 in there, I was even more blown away. And there was one like little video they had of it where it showed a real quick, like half a second cut of the thing coming in for on an approach, so I could actually see what was going on there. And I was like, at first it looked fine, but then I looked, you know, um, and I went through it all. I'm like, well, that's not right. That's not right. That doesn't look like that. And then when I actually got the sim and started flying it, I'm like, okay, well, there's a lot of work to be done here.
Yeah. It was a big disappointment. I mean, that airplane, when I first flew it, I mean, that thing, you could be rolling down the runway in like 2,000 feet on the runway and be doing 200 knots. Like, there is no stinking way. That thing accelerated faster than the space shuttle. I took it up
Yeah,
to 65,000 feet. It didn't even struggle to get up there. And it was doing Mach 0.95. And I thought, who in the right mind did this and decided, yep, that's good. Go ahead and put it out. It's fine. I mean, it was awful. It was a
yeah.
disappointment.
The thrust was out of control, and it's actually I started looking into that. I remember looking into it. I don't know if it's contributed to that, but I noticed that of course, then the fuel consumption was out of control as well.
Yes.
And I looked into it, and I noticed that they had it doubled. They had the total fuel consumption, but it was written in there per engine, so it was basically doubling the fuel flow. I don't know if that had any effect on the thrust. Perhaps not, because I think there was maybe some other thrust scalar things you could change there. But that was definitely one of the first things I wanted to change to make it at least tolerable and not flying like a Saturn V rocket.
Yeah. The Saturn V rocket wishes it could fly as fast as that original CJ4.
Yeah, it was insane.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So
So go ahead, Ian.
I was just saying, was that what inspired you? Did you start working with the working title group, or are you a founding member of the working title group, or I don't know
And
how that works?
yeah, we all kind of started separate. I had a I was talking with a couple friends, and I was kind of making a joke that I wanted to make this uh I'm sure you guys are familiar with the Zibbo 737 and X-Plane.
Yep.
Well, my online name is K2, I guess, and I made a joke that I was gonna make the Kibbo CJ4, and I wanted to get it to that level and things like that. Of course, I was biting off more than I can chew, but I started with fixing the fuel flow as the first thing, and then fixing the thrust to where it was manageable, and then I started looking in the FMS because that's pretty much the main interface with the jet. Um,
Yeah.
and it just the simple stuff like, oh well, this layout's not correct, or this isn't the right screen, or these buttons don't even work. So I started working on the layouts and the colors as well, and then I noticed, I don't remember what, I just decided to go on AvSim, and I just looked up CJ4 to see what people were talking about it, and I came across this one post about the guy saying he found the same issue with the fuel flow as well. His name was Chris Burnett, and I noticed that he was doing some other stuff as well. And I was like, hey, what else have you found out? What else are you working on right now? I was like, do you want to get together on this thing, and so we're not kind of doing the same thing at the same time? He's like, yeah, sure. And then I think he threw together just a random Discord. I don't think we even have a name at the time. There was really no group at that point. But we started just doing some simple stuff here and there. And then he brought another friend. I think it was Matt Nishan. Yeah, it was an old friend of his. I guess He's a developer, and asked him to jump on board. And then we had Rob Jones jumped on board, and then Dominic from Germany. I'm not sure where he came from. Maybe the forums. I don't know, but he came on, and he was a really big help from the start because that guy was a machine. He worked. I don't even know when he slept, to be honest. He was because he's like 6 hours ahead of us or something like that, and he was always on no matter what time we were on. I have no idea when he slept, but he helped us out a lot. Because I'm not a professional coder. I did it when I was in the military. I got really into it, and then once I left, I kind of just stopped doing it.
Yeah.
And the CJ4 was also a great project for me to get back into programming because it's kind of hard to just jump right back into it without any guidance or any project or anything like that.
Right.
So it was a lot of small little things that you could just ask them, like, "Hey, how do you do this again?" Or what's it? What's this right here? And it was a really big help. And the ball started really rolling. We just started pumping out updates and this and that, and then some of the bigger coding heavy hitters, Matt, Rob, and Dominic. Then we started getting into the big systems like the flight plan manager, which was mostly Matt Nishan. He spent probably 2 months on it. We're chipping away at it little by little, and it really paid off because honestly, it's there's so many limitations from the stock sim. You can't go direct to any fix on an approach other than the initial approach fix. You can't do anything with that. It was like for some reason, like the approaches were a completely separate part of a flight plan that were like almost inaccessible. And we saw that and we're like, this, we can't do this any other way. We have to make our own system. And that the way that they were parsing the nav data was just weird and incorrect. And there was just so many limitations that we decided we just needed to rewrite it. So that was a huge help. And then really we just kept going and going and going, and really built up a lot of steam.
Yeah, and I've noticed you guys like every single time an update comes out, it's I'll read the list, and I know you. I think you messaged me the last time I did a live stream or something. Like, oh, next time use 0.12
Oh yeah,
whatever version. And I went and looked it up after that. Man, they put that in. You can go direct altitudes now. It's like, this is great. This is almost like the real FMS 3000. And it
yeah.
is. It's like every update, it gets closer and closer. And I've told people that I work with, I said when we started, because I fly a G200 that has the FMS 6100 by Collins, and the XLS Plus has the 3000. But I said when we first started flying these, we were using flying universal FMS previously, and the Collins worked totally different. It was like a different language. And I would have loved to have had something like this back then when I first started flying these Collins boxes a little over 10 years ago. Because I mean, you guys have done an amazing job at getting it to act almost exactly like the real thing, which is compared to where it was at release to now. I mean, it's the difference in night and day.
Yeah, it really is. And like I'll get reminded of that every time there's a new sim update, and I forget to close the sim out because it doesn't load up your mods, so it loads the default CJ4, and you're like, whoa, hold on a minute.
Yeah, don't want that. Yeah.
But yeah, I think we got pretty lucky with the way the group was. We have the professional developers, and then Chris and I are both pilots. At least for me, I had the experience in the CJ4, and there's so many things that the manuals don't describe well or at all that you really need to see it or experience it in the airplane. And I think especially like I think it's the fine details that really make the thing pop. And there's still so many little things. In fact, I still talk to my chief pilot at my old company. I'm like, hey, what? Like when you're flying and you press VNAV and do this, like what does it do? The manual doesn't tell us what it does. Like if you fly on this heading and do this and you press VNAV, does it even allow you to turn it on or this? Like there's so many little things that, man, I wish I could go for a CJ4 flight right now with a GoPro and try all these weird scenarios that simmers love to get themselves into and see what the thing would actually do.
So, which manual were you using? The actual Collins manual for the FMS?
Yeah, I mean, I had all the books and all that, the manuals from when I flew it. I was using the CJ4 FMS version because they are a little different. There's like a Citation Excel, or not an Excel, Encore version, and there's slight differences here and there.
Yeah,
But
because we had Encore Pluses, and they had this same box in it, and there are slight differences. Like one, like if you go in on this one on Flight Sim into approach it, or yeah, under approach, and when you select the approaches, then you keep going for the runways. Like that one says runways, but in our airplane it says visual.
yeah, so there's so tiny little variances like that, especially too, and like in fact, some of them boxes, you know, you can get custom information in it, or not information, but like some of the index pages have different what do you
Different
call it? Like
sections or
different layouts. Like not every airplane has a data link in it.
right.
Ours did, but we didn't pay for it. So I never
We don't
used
either.
it. Yeah.
We used to have it, but we got rid of it. We have high speed internet in all of our airplanes now, so we don't need it.
Yeah. We had internet, but we never there was a whole story with that, but we never used that for anything aviation or operational for the airplane, but
You guys alone, I think, are bringing the realism to flight sim with this. And like when I first used that FMS, I was just blown away. I almost gave up on it because I couldn't find the community folder. Something that simple, and then somebody helped me do it, and then I got it. And I was just blown away when I used it. This is amazing. This is just like the real thing. I can actually manipulate the FMS the way I do in the airplane. Versus previously, the default stuff, you couldn't do anything with it. It was
yeah.
terrible.
And in fact,
And
yeah, I mean, like again, it's the details that really make the thing pop out. And if you ever, if you boot back up the default airplane, you'll see that the font's completely different. Well, Matt Nishan had this font program, and he, based on some of the pictures I've taken of the real airplane, which I did visit actually after the project started, I visited actually 3 times to go get pictures and data and reference material. Unfortunately, we couldn't leave the hangar, but with all the reference material, he actually made the font as close as you can get it to the real thing. And then also, we saw that there's limitations on the render of the FMS display, like the way that I think it's like 24 characters across on these lines, and 7 or 8 vertical rows, but it wasn't correct the way that the default one was. So Dominic actually wrote an entire new renderer system to be able to display it exactly like the real unit would, and I think it really shows because it looks pretty good.
yeah, it does. It looks almost like the real thing. It's very impressive.
Yeah, and one thing too that was kind of annoying was, in the Collins, like when you turn on, let's say you turn on like flap 0 or 15 or anti-ice, it turns like it
Mm-hmm.
shows the selected one in green. Well, that
Yeah,
wasn't possible with the old system. So something like that, like, well, we can't. There's no way we could possibly make this a selectable thing. We have to build a new render.
yeah.
So
Otherwise,
a
you
lot
can't
of
see what you've got selected.
yeah, exactly. And I didn't want to fake it and do some other method because then it's just not. It's not the real thing. It's not close to it. And
Right.
yeah, I'd like to get it as realistic as possible. So
Yeah. And like I know you and I have emailed a little bit, and like I said, if you guys ever need help, because I have access to the 3100, I'll be more than willing to. If you guys want pictures or whatever at any time, just let me know.
yeah,
So I'll do what I can.
yeah, definitely cool. Yeah, it's tough. Like even like some of the small things that you don't think about when you're flying. In fact, you don't doesn't even cross your mind. But when you need to rebuild the system, you gotta sometimes you ask yourself like, well, what would it do in this situation? And you have no idea. You have to like physically ask someone like, what does it do in this situation? They're like, I have no idea because they don't pay attention to it. But it's
Yeah.
critical because it's you know,
You need to know what it's going to do. But
yeah, exactly
it'll be
what
in
it's
a
gonna do.
situation also where it might be it's doing something that you've seen it do so many times it doesn't even register.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and a lot of this stuff is a given. It's of course the Proline 21 is a proprietary system. I'm not going to tell you how everything works. You just have to kind of figure it out on your own, and that's
Right.
where like reference materials is king because honestly the Proline or the FMS manual there's a lot of errors in it. There's a lot of like not spelling mistakes, but um, there's obviously different versions of it through different aircraft, and at some points they're telling you that the needles in the CJ4 are green for FMS when that's not the case. They're magenta. They're green in like uh,
Localizer
a
or VOR.
Premier or like a
Oh,
Premier
okay.
jet. If you watch like Premier One driver, his FMS needles are in green and not magenta. So
Oh,
there's like small little errors like that in the book where if you didn't actually fly the aircraft, you'd be like, no, that's not right at all. But there's so many little things about the system that you don't know what it does until you actually see it happen. So it's tough to get that stuff sometimes.
yeah. Yeah, so in the live stream the other night, I was talking about the rain, and you told a story about that rain effect, which I would like for you to tell for everybody that didn't hear it. I was kind of blown away by, like, wow, I thought it was a real rain effect that Flight Sim did, but if you could share that.
Yeah. So I actually started recording audio as a hobby in my spare time. This is before I even knew about Flight Sim. I started recording aircraft because it's very difficult to do, especially like recording a business jet is nearly impossible. Especially some of these different things because they're so difficult to get to and expensive for someone to actually do it. But I started recording audio, and I linked up with this guy who he actually used some of my sounds, or he bought them because they're so difficult to get these, and he would use his sounds in like film and TV shows and all that. Um, so I started recording the CJ4, and I recorded all the buttons and cockpit, noises and all that, switches, which was not many, thankfully. Um,
Yeah,
and
my next
then
question was going to be, how long would that have taken?
yeah, a while. It's not too bad though. But I was also an amateur at it. I was kind of getting used to it, and looking back at some of the audio, I'm like, damn, I wish I could have knew what I was doing back then. I could have done it better. But
Right.
gained some experience with it. But then I started recording the engines. That's by far the most difficult thing is recording good, clean audio of a jet engine because airports are noisy. It's hard to get access to them sometimes. So like we had 2 airplanes and 4 pilots. So when the other pilots are flying out on a trip, I was like, oh, perfect. I can record the thing starting up and taxiing out and all that. So I got audio of that. And then a couple flights, I put microphones in the forward baggage compartment and the rear baggage compartment, and they provided vastly different audio soundscapes. Um, but the rain, though, so trying to record just rain in the airplane is impossible. There's so much other noise, and the wind noise is the loudest thing in there. But I recorded. I was in my car. Actually, I think I was in training in Orlando for the CJ4, and there was like a thunderstorm going by, and I had my rental car, and I put all these microphones up or in certain sections, like one right up on the dash, one in the back window, one near the roof, and the storm was going through, and I recorded all this audio of it. And then looking back on it, I was like, man, this could definitely pass for what it sounds like in the airplane, because there's no like metal roof in the thing. It's a lot more solid, I guess, with the windscreen and all that. But when you start going 200 knots, it starts getting loud. And um, if the sound scales, of course, from little light rain to like a raging thunderstorm. So if you set the rain to like heavy rain or fly through the thunderstorm of the simulator, what you're hearing is actually the thunderstorm that was over my car making the same noise, and it's pretty close, I think. It's pretty close to what you'd actually hear.
What kind of car was it?
I think it's like a Nissan Altima or something like that.
You got a good rental car.
Yeah.
And I've been in that parking lot were you at Flight Safety?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've been in that parking lot many times. So,
Maybe I've seen you there. Who knows?
Probably. I haven't been there in about 2 years, but I believe we're going to start going back there.
Okay.
They're moving our sim. So, but no, the rain noise fooled me because I thought it was something Microsoft did, and I thought it was authentic. Like, wow, this sounds really good. It's like the rain's really beating down on this airplane. And I've heard it like that some in a citation, and it did. It sounded really close. So
yeah,
it's a very good effect.
It still needs some tweaks, of course. I really like audio in games, and if it's not perfect, it kind of annoys me. Still a lot of work to be done on the audio. I just don't have too much time right now to do it. But yeah, it takes, at least for me, it takes so much time because I'll get frustrated, like it just doesn't sound perfect, and like I want to fix right now with the rain. Like when you're flying at 250 knots through heavy rain, it's very loud and it sounds almost like white noise. But I just couldn't get the right blend of white noise, and it just didn't sound right. So I kind of abandoned that project and just kind of left it the way it is now. But I still think it sounds decent, better than it was. But the other thing too is the gear sound that I used was from the microphone that was in the forward baggage compartment. So that audio, though, that thing was super clean because the engines, you don't really hear them once you start moving. And it's really just drowned out by the wind noise. There's so much air going over that nose that it just makes this noise. But the gear is right there where the microphone was at. So it had really good audio of the gear, of the retraction, and the, when the gear is out, like the noise of the drag and all that. So I was able to cleanly extract that out of that and use it. That's what you hear in the sim right now. So it's exactly what you would hear in the real airplane.
Yeah, and that does sound good too. I've noticed that when you drop the gear,
Yeah,
just the sound. And granted, I've not flown the CJ4. I've flown lots of other citations, and it sounds. I think they all pretty much sound the same, but it does
yeah,
sound really good there too.
I've
Yep.
noticed that too. You said that you were really locked in on the sound in the Sims and stuff, and that makes a huge difference. I've noticed
Oh
that
yeah,
across X-Plane and Flight Sim 2020 and stuff, that the planes that are real good have real good sound effects in them. So
yeah, and they're hard. It's
yeah, I'm
so
sure I
hard
can
to
imagine.
sound. But I think the one I'm most proud about, or that sounds the best, I think, is the wind audio. So it's a blend. A couple flights that I did, I just threw my microphone right up on the dash. In fact, that's the sound you hear when you're flying in most. That's like the front sound, I guess. The foreground sound is I'm flying at like 300 knots or something like that, or whatever it was at altitude. But I use that sound, and also I mix some of the sound from the front baggage compartment, because they do sound a little bit different. It gets more bassy and um, maybe more white noise as you're going faster with true airspeed and all that. But um, that to me, that's the most important, because when you're flying, that's really all you hear. You don't really hear the engines too much, because most of the noise you hear is just the sound of the airframe flying through the air. And it's I think it sounds really good. It's kind of calming, but we did also we kind of blended it. So obviously when you take off, you hear the engines whining and all that, and then as you get faster and faster, that sound actually decreases. So if you're in cruise, and I remember doing this and testing it, like when you're in cruise, you can barely hear the engines spooling up and spooling down. So I try to get as close as I could to the real thing, and I think it sounds pretty good with the wind and all that.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've noticed too. Like in airplanes, like you, especially longer airplanes, and probably with what you're flying now, you don't hear the engine at all, hardly. I mean, it's hard to hear them even on startup. And
Yeah,
I use the Bose A20s headsets. So I mean, that really kills a lot of noise.
yeah,
So even without them, you don't hear it. But when you're in cruise, there is so much noise from the wind. When you
yeah.
take the headset off, it's just I can't even like how to explain how much louder it is. It's probably like the noise you hear in your headset times 10 when you take them off. There's that much. There's
Oh
that much
yeah.
noise. And I've flown airplanes in the past. I flew an Astra, and it had an antenna like right up above the cockpit, and it was so loud. I mean, your ears would just almost be hurting by the time you got back when
Oh
you're
yeah,
in the
totally.
descending like 300, and I think that thing descend you go to 353 knots, but it made a lot of noise. But yeah, definitely
Yeah.
a lot of wind noise, not very much engine noise, but
It's funny. It's funny.
good quality headsets help.
We had the A20s and the CJ4 as well, but I never turned on the noise canceling because it was too quiet with them on. And I think because the CJ4 doesn't have windshield wipers, so that cuts down on a lot of noise that's right in front of you. Um, the airplane I fly now does have windshield wipers, and it's definitely noisier than the CJ4 by far.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
So,
sometimes
so here's a question. I noticed on some live streams I've watched, gamers will turn the windshield wipers on in flight, in clouds, and tell me the last time you actually turned the windshield wipers on in flight in clouds when you can't even see the
never,
ground.
never.
Exactly.
I
Never.
was
In
just
fact,
about to say, don't get Sam started on windshield wipers.
the only time I've used them is if it's like moderate rain and you're taxing out to the runway. As soon as you get on the runway and you start rolling, maybe 60 knots, you just turn them off, because
Yeah.
the airstream is just going to blow it out of the way. And then
Yep.
maybe if it's like moderate to heavy rain and you're about to break out of the clouds, maybe turn it on. But honestly, they're just more annoying.
Yeah. We had them on the G200. They actually took them off because they didn't do anything. They made noise, and even on the ground, I used them one time, and it was better. You could see better with them turned off. So,
Yeah,
and they actually took them off. I don't know if I'm sure some G200s have them, but I think most of them took them off.
yeah.
But
It seemed weird flying the CJ4. Like, man, it doesn't really have wipers. And I remember flying once in heavy rain. We're about to take off, and yeah, your visibility is definitely reduced a bit. But I mean, once you start rolling, it's no issue at all.
right. Yeah, and one thing that's nice, the CJ4 has it, the XLS Plus has it, the heated windshield, and it's heated all the time. There's no buttons or nothing. That's one feature I absolutely love with the XLS Plus with real flying. Like it's nice
Yeah,
having that.
and that's I one thing that immediately tell in the sim, you're flying the CJ4 and you fly through, one cloud molecule and your windshields are completely ice.
severe
Like,
ice.
that would never happen.
No, it's
I've
horrible.
I've never seen any ice inside of the heated area whatsoever.
And then they get ice back in places that it's not even physically possible to get ice.
It's like if extreme icing was a thing, that's what the sim would be.
Yeah, and it would simulate it very well.
Yeah. So hopefully
That-
that gets tweaked because icing's pretty cool, but it's definitely. I mean, most of the icing you'll experience in a jet is light,
Like a minute
trace and light.
at most, yeah.
I think maybe once or twice I've seen moderate icing, flying through freezing rain. But other than that, I mean, it's just not that big of a threat in a jet. Piston, different
No.
story, but in a jet, I don't even think twice. You get a pyro up about icing somewhere, it's like, okay, we're just gonna blow right through it.
Yeah, we'll blast through that in a minute or two. And I think I'm the same way. I think the worst ice I've had is moderate. I've not had severe, but usually you're just up or like climbing through it or descending through it so quick.
Exactly.
It's not even an issue. You turn on engine and ice, maybe down low, like you might blow the boots or turn on the heated wing, but other than that, that's it.
Yeah, and you have so much extra performance down low with the engines.
It doesn't hurt.
It's just not a thing at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to fly through severe.
No. Severe anything, severe turbulence, severe ice.
Yeah.
That's for the birds. I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
The working title group have merged with Sobo, essentially. The default FMSs and GPSs, I don't know if you can say this, but is there any chance of revamping those systems to make them more user-friendly like the FMSs and the CJ4?
I'm not sure how much of it I can talk about, but it's definitely something I'd like to do. But then again, it takes a lot of time to do this stuff, and there's a lot of airplanes in the sim. But I think the effects or the things you might see perhaps would be like the things that would affect a lot of systems and airplanes. Like the flight plan system and all that would could be used and stuff like that. So I think, at least in those terms, perhaps that would be more of the things you would see than going specifically for an airplane, I guess. Like, fixing like a 787 FMS, I guess. I'm throwing something out there, but yeah, I guess there's not really much I can talk about it.
Okay.
Are the current projects? I mean, because you guys did the the G3000 and the 530 and 430 stuff, didn't you? Also,
no, we didn't do the 430 and 530. That's another guy.
That's another one
now. Yeah.
Okay.
We did the G1000 and the G3000, which is the G3000 is shared or takes the place of the G5000 in the longitude.
Right. That's the one I use the most. Are those going to be something you continue to work on as well as the CJ4, even though you're working with them now?
Yeah, I mean, we are working, on projects for Microsoft. So, that's where most of our time is going. We'd still love to support the mods, and we have one of our guys. He's working on the G3000 now. He's been actually working pretty steadily on it, putting out some updates. But we'd love to get those into the base sim, but it's more of a time thing and what Microsoft wants. Because we're kind of at the mercy of them. But it's definitely something we'd love to bring in, and we'd love to bring the same level of the CJ4 into these other components, things like that.
Yeah, and that was a question I had, and I think you kind of answered it. So the stuff that you're doing, is it stuff Microsoft or Soba that came to you and said, we want you to do this, or are you guys giving them ideas?
Let's see. I mean, it was kind of, let's see, I'm trying to think of a way to put it. I'm not sure I can talk about it, I guess.
Okay. You can plead the fifth, that's fine.
Yeah. I don't want to, overstep my boundaries, so I guess I'll just can't answer it.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair and totally understandable.
Yeah.
So everybody, that's all we have. Thank you for listening. Sean, thank you for your time and answering questions about the working title group. And
thanks for having me on board.
Yeah, you're welcome.